Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending our IAC virtual conference. American Indian Foods part of this. My name is Michael Schallenberger. I'm a USDA Technical Assistant Specialist for Washington Indian tribes and tribal members. Today, this particular session, we're going to provide you information on Eats Academy launch with Erin Parker, Garrett Blake Johnson, and Carly Griffith Hotdevt. I don't know if I got that name right, but I hope I did. And I want to make sure that I thank the sponsors of this conference, sponsored by the Champions of Native Agriculture. And first off, we're going to have Carly Griffith of the Eats Academy, and she is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and is a seasoned legal professional admitted to practice in Oklahoma, Cherokee Nation, and Muskogee Creek Nation, with an affinity for government law, agricultural, tribal policy, and public administration. After that, we'll have a Garrett Blake Jackson of the Eats Academy, and is a policy officer and staff attorney for the Indigenous Food and Agricultural Initiative at the University of Arkansas. Possessing nearly 6 years of combined experience in federal Indian law and analyzing agricultural policy. Then we'll have Erin Parker of the Eats Academy, currently serves as the acting director of the Indigenous Food and Agricultural Initiative at the University of Arkansas School of Law, where she supports the initiative through program development, research and writing, and analysis, of legislative and regulatory issues affecting tribal governments, businesses, and individual producers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that. It's great to have our team here today. Lasasha, I don't know if you have any preparatory remarks too before we kick off.
Hey, nope, I'm good. You guys go ahead and carry it on. I'm just co-hosting on the back end, but my interrupt when it's time to celebrate, because this is a launch. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thanks to IAC for having us. I know several of us have been presenting on a couple of different panels during this virtual conference. We missed being able to be with everybody in person, but we're really excited to be able to share this launch of this program with you. I wanted to give you just a little bit of information about our team before we jump in. I know when I go to share screen, sometimes you can't see all of our faces. So if everybody wants to come on and just say hi, we have our Director of Tribal Enterprise, Carly Griffith Hotdevt. If you want to say hello.
Sure.
Or you might have to talk for it to show you.
Absolutely. Osio Nagata, Carly Hotdevt, Dagodoa, Chichalagi, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Jigega. Hello, everyone. My name is Carly Hotdevt. I am a Cherokee citizen, and I am joining you today from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And as Erin said, I am the Director of Tribal Enterprise, and I'm very excited to bring to you the Eats Academy launch materials today.
Thank you, Carly. We also have Blake Jackson, our policy officer and one of our staff attorneys. If you want to say hello, Blake.
Halito, Chimichukma, Blake Jackson, Sahojafo, Chata Sehoke. My name is Blake Jackson. I'm the policy officer and staff attorney at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative, and I am joining you guys from Fayetteville, Arkansas, where the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative is headquartered at the University of Arkansas. I'm excited to be with you guys today and be sharing these materials as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Blake. We also have Josiah Griffin on our team, who's our program and policy specialist. Josiah, do you want to say hello too?
Thanks, Erin. Aloha kaku, everyone. My name is Josiah Griffin. I'm Native Hawaiian, and as Erin said, I'm a program and policy specialist with the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. Our team has worked hard on pulling together this information. We are super excited that we are able to get it out the door. So thank you for sharing your time with us here.
Thanks, everybody. And as Mike said, I'm Erin Parker. I'm our interim director right now at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. And I, like my colleagues, I'm really, really excited to be able to share what we've got with you today. So with that, I'm going to get into it, share my screen here. Hey, it worked. I'm always excited when technology works, especially these days. So welcome to the launch of the Eats Academy. This is a little bit of a preview that we wanted to do special for everybody who comes to IAC. We do wish that we were with you in person. We were really looking forward to being able to share these materials in person and have this that good energy that we always have at IAC from everybody who's attending and working in food systems. Is always my personal favorite conference every year. So I'm sad that we're not here in person, but I hope some of our enthusiasm and excitement for empowering agriculture through tribal sovereignty, or EATS, comes through today. So that's what we're going to be showing you. But before we get there, I want to give you a little bit of prefatory information about IFAI in case you're not familiar with our work. We were founded in 2013 at the University of Arkansas School of Law by former Dean and then Vice Chancellor Stacy Leeds, who's a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and our founding director, Janie Sim-Phip, who's a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation. Really everything that we do at IFAI is designed to be kind of a one-stop resource for tribal governments, native farmers and ranchers, fishermen, food change makers across Indian country who are working to enhance the health and wellness of tribal communities through agricultural law and policy. That's what we do. We provide strategic legal analysis, policy research, and education in order to empower Indian country through agriculture, through food sovereignty efforts, and economic empowerment as well. So that's really what we're designed to do. We have a whole slate of programs and offerings that we have, and you can see just some of them here. I'm not going to get too deep into a lot of our work because I really want to let my colleagues here take it away and give you a little bit of a preview of the EATS Academy. But just as you can see on the screen, here are just some of the things that we work on, and all of these are free resources. We are set up to be a free resource for Indian country. So if there's anything that you need in the space of food and agriculture law and policy, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. You can connect with us on our website. You can email each of us individually. It's probably the best way to get a hold of us right now while we're all still working from home, but all of our contact information will be at the end of this presentation. We would love to hear from you if there's something that you need that we can help you with in the space of food and agriculture. To give you a little bit of an overview of EATS Academy, the material that we're debuting for you today is all made possible by the generous support of the Walmart Foundation. And what we're really trying to do here with that support is create a whole ecosystem of materials that help tribal governments empower their people through tribal governance, through law and policy, and through programs that strengthen tribal food systems, that empower economies, and improve health outcomes. This is really the core of our work. And so what the EATS Academy is designed to do is like take that core function of IFAI, that putting the tribal sovereignty and food sovereignty, and give tribal governments and individual native producers the materials that they need to be able to better access existing USDA authorities, but also to be able to stand up tribally driven efforts to create food systems change and resiliency in Indian country. We initially, when we designed this program, we wanted to be out in the world in Indian country, talking to people, working directly with tribal leaders. We wanted to be able to walk through some of this with you and host a workshop today. We had to alter our delivery mechanism a little bit, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. So we haven't been able to be out on the ground doing training sessions and meetings like we'd be able to. And we hope to be able to pick that up as soon as it's possible and safe. But for now, we're going to do all of this digitally. And I think we've got a really cool slate of materials that we're going to roll out and give you a little bit of a preview or a teaser today of what we're going to have coming. We're going to do some additional material release in later months. So keep watching our space at indigenousfoodandagricultureinitiative.com. You can also head us up on social media. We've got all of our accounts linked at the end of this presentation. So you can always find what you need in this ecosystem of resources. That's going to include some onboarding documents for tribal leaders who are recently investing in tribal departments of agriculture, or just investing in agriculture generally at the tribal level. And we're also going to have some producer-focused materials as well on how to access existing USDA programs and also tribal programs that are created to further tribal food sovereignty in this space. So with that, I think that's enough probably from me. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Carly Griffith Hotdevt, our Director of Tribal Enterprise, to start walking us through some of these EATS Academy materials. And Carly, since I'm driving and everybody else, please just say next slide and I will run the show back here quietly.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for that introduction, Erin, and for kicking this off for us. Like Erin said, we're very excited to be able to bring this information to you. We've been working very hard over the last few months to get this information out. And so for this preview, we've selected resources that were created in contemplation of supporting the development of tribal departments of agriculture, targeted towards the audience of tribal governments, elected officials, tribal employees, and tribal stakeholders. And we've also pulled some or developed some materials for individuals as well. And we'll go through those here. So for the tribal government focused materials, we're going to give you an overview of some example case studies of tribes that have existing departments or divisions of agriculture. Show you a mind map to help guide decision making when tribes are trying to decide how and where and why they want to set up their own tribal departments of ag. We've developed a resource worksheet to help gather information in one location to really assist in that informed decision making. And we'll also be providing you with some sample organization charts so that you can get a better understanding of how a Department of Ag may be organized, where it can live at, what programs live under it, and what programs it interacts with that may not necessarily be organized all under the same umbrella. Next slide, please. We're also going to be showing you some tribal individual focused materials, and we have some really great infographics that have been put together detailing the benefits of tribal departments of ag for native producers, beginning farmers and ranchers, and for value-added operators. And we also wanted to share with you some business organization opportunities. As your business grows from beyond your home and into you're targeting bigger markets and getting additional revenues associated with your agribusiness enterprises. We want to make sure that you are protecting your business, yourself, and organized in a way that's going to be efficient and effective for you. Next slide. So we're going to start with our case studies today, and we were fortunate enough to be able to reach out to Muskogee Creek Nation and interview their director, Trenton Kissee, to get some additional information about how the program operates. And so for this particular slide, we really wanted to focus on, giving you some historical context in this case study, talking about the date of creation, who the director is, who the employees are, and where the funding sources come from. And then also talking about what goals the department has. Some goals are codified. For example, here at Muskogee Creek Nation, there is a statutory indication that the agribusiness enterprises are intended to be revenue generating. Now, some tribes, when they're getting their agribusiness operations or Department of Ag activities up and running, they may have different goals. Maybe they want to provide direct services. Maybe they want to be vertically integrated for some of their retail or gaming facilities. Maybe they want to act as a regulatory body rather than actually operating an agribusiness enterprise. So there's a lot of different ways and different goals that tribes will seek to meet their needs of their tribe, and also figure out how to make it work for what everybody wants. What do you want to happen? What resources do you have, and how can you make it happen? So these case studies are an example of some of the information that's available. And we will be publishing all of these materials on our website. So be on the lookout at the end of this presentation for a link in order to be able to access all of these materials. They're downloadable. You can view them online. You can print them off, although with our really, really nice graphics that might eat up all your ink. So definitely be on the lookout for that link at the end so that you can access these after our slide presentation is over. Next slide. We were also fortunate to be able to reach out to Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin. Mr. Gary Besaw was considerate enough to interview with us and tell us and share information about their development of the Department of Ag and Food Systems case study. So we talked about the date of creation in this particular case study, the intent behind the creation. There was consideration at Menominee that there were some poor health outcomes and a real need to kind of strengthen the food systems in order to provide better opportunities, better nutritional opportunities for tribal citizens. Their funding sources are also diverse. They have some grant opportunities that they are able to work with, and they have some operational activities that include targeting healthy foods, food education, and training. Mr. Besaw let us know food is medicine, and that really kind of is the driving intent behind the entire development of this program. And they have some additional goals that they're interested in pursuing, especially from a policy and legal and code development perspective. And I think that that's a really good kind of overview about some ways that tribes could organize, particularly in this instance. So we're very excited to be able to offer that to you, and I will let you read that when you get to download or access that information at our link, because it's really great information and will kind of help you wrap your mind around what possibilities exist when it comes to creating a division of agriculture or a department of agriculture. Next slide. So along with our materials that we've developed, we have this mind map put together for decision making. And this mind map, it reflects some of the common questions and common considerations when people are thinking about undertaking the creation of a tribal department of agriculture. And those considerations include staffing, who needs to work in what programs, how many managers do you need, how many frontline workers do you need, do you have people that are currently on staff that you would be able to utilize their skill set in order to benefit the operations. What kind of communication have you received from your community, from your tribal citizens, from your neighbors, from any stakeholder that would be interested in the type of work that your Department of Agriculture is going to be doing? We know a lot of times that there are some independent movements for seed saving that could be of interest. We know that sometimes people want to put together a hub or a cooperative in order to consolidate to market the products that they're producing. There's a way that, you know, the tribe may be able to support that through a Department of Agriculture. There's a lot of information that you can gather to meet the needs of your community by listening to them and soliciting their feedback. We also talk about organization and structure, which is the blue hexagon and the green hexagon, as far as where does this program live? Does it need to be, do you need a whole new department created that would result in a cabinet level position? Do you want to organize it under an existing department, maybe like Department of Commerce or Department of Interior, depending upon how your tribe is put together? If you do want it to be a standalone, what programs go in it? What programs stay out of it? A lot of tribes, especially when it comes to federally funded programs, have existing operations that fit within the concept of a Department of Agriculture or Department of Food Systems, but maybe already exist in another location. This can kind of give you some thought-provoking considerations about, do we want to reorganize them? Do we want to leave them where they are and create new programs? How will these programs work together? This is really intended to kind of address some of the questions that come along with creating a new department or reorganizing a department to address some of the needs for agriculture. But I think the most important component of this mind map is the goal setting and analysis component. And it really helps walk you through what the intent of your Department of Agriculture is intended to do. Do you want to generate revenue? Is that the most important thing for your tribe? So you want to have an agribusiness enterprise that's going to get you where you want to be as far as that's concerned. What considerations need to come into that if you are going to start a new agribusiness enterprise or scale up an existing agribusiness enterprise? If it's intended to be self-funding, are you willing to put forth the financial commitment until it gets to a break even or profit driven point? It talks about different kinds of considerations for funding when it comes to that specific goal, if that's what a tribe intends to pursue. Maybe you want to be direct services providing. You want to make sure that you're feeding your people healthy and nutritious foods, and maybe you want to produce that yourself. As a tribe, you have your own operation and you want to do direct service provision. So the produce or livestock or wild harvested food products that you're able to gather, you would distribute to your citizens and your people in a way that you choose, either through an existing program or as a supplement to a federal program. And it really would give you the insight as far as what that would look like. Maybe your production activities meet all the needs of your people and you have a surplus, and then you want to sell your surplus and reinvest that into your operation. That's an opportunity as well. Again, there's cost considerations and funding components that come along with that. And it's helpful to really take the temperature and know what your tribe wants to do. In addition to revenue generating opportunities and providing direct services, you can look to be vertically integrated. You can look to offset costs as a goal of the program, or you can look to enter the regulatory space. And that regulatory space is really important. And I think is one of the primary reasons why a tribe should consider starting a Department of Tribal Agriculture. when we don't occupy a space as tribal peoples and as tribes as whole, we oftentimes suffer encroachment from other jurisdictional authorities, whether it's the state, whether it's the county, maybe there's a municipality, or even the federal government, or possibly even other tribes, depending upon, what areas of regulation are going on, or if you're on a shared reservation. If you don't have, your own regulatory body and your own way to say, we're going to be licensing and permitting hemp in a way that's going to meet the federal requirements. That's where your regulation and regulatory body could live, your staff who does the regulations. If you have a cottage food industry law and you need to have enforcement and training and permitting associated with that, that's another type of regulatory opportunity. And there's many others, depending upon what the needs and desires of your tribe are. If you have any specific cultural practices that you think are important to maintain, especially regarding food and agriculture systems, that's a place where that institutional knowledge can live as well. And when you have a Department of Agriculture and you have staff that work there and are able to, continue in their positions, through changes in administration, through adoption and creation of new programs, it really helps the longevity and the stability of your tribe to retain that institutional knowledge, but also develop new talent that's coming up. It's a place where you can host internships for youth that are involved in agriculture. It's a place where you can maybe even share staff with another tribe or another jurisdiction. If you are working on and starting at a smaller scale and then working your way up, which I definitely think that's a great consideration to make sure that you're not doing too much too fast, because you can outgrow your capacity. So growing capacity in a considerate way and having staffing in mind for that is something that's very important. So this is a really great resource, kind of help you walk through and think about some of the things that branch off. So, we know we want to do this. How do we do that? What other considerations are there? And kind of takes you through that trail to help you get all the information that you need to make an informed decision. Next slide. This is one that I'm really excited about. This resource bank for informed goal setting is essentially a worksheet, and it helps tribes kind of go in and fill out the different resources that they might have available to them when they're considering setting up their own departments of agriculture. And so it looks at, what land do we have available? How many acres is it? How many of those acres are currently arable? How's it titled? Is it in trust? Does the tribe own it in fee status? Is it currently held by individuals in restricted status, but we may be able to get a lease on it? And what leases are available to us? What buildings or facilities are available? Do we have a barn? Do we have some office space? Do we have other types of infrastructure that we can leverage for our Department of Ag operations? What equipment, whether it's office equipment like computers and printers and anything that you would need to fill an office, all the way to, what kind of tractors do we have? Do we have any implements? Are there vehicles that are available to us? What equipment will we be able to allocate to a Department of Agriculture for the types of operation that we would be interested in? And what expertise is available to you? Do you have tribal citizens with cultural and knowledge specific to your tribe's heritage and what food products are particularly important to you, and do you want to emphasize that? What about government experts? Do you know somebody who can help you organize this? Somebody who's been working with tribes or maybe even in your tribe that understands the historical development of how you got to where you are today and how to make a Department of Ag fit with some of the other programs that currently exist. Expertise can also be, your elected officials, if they have any particular insight or knowledge or experience with departments of agriculture or food and ag systems. And also leveraging some of your academic expertise. Do you have a tribal college or a land-grant university that's nearby that you are working with or would like to work with? Those are some considerations. Water is such a huge component. I wanted to give this one its own section to address some of those needs, especially if you're going to be involved in production agriculture or possibly even processing activities. Access to water and access to other utilities is going to be critical. What water rights does your tribe have? What access and use rights do you have? And this is particularly relevant for agriculture because a lot of our treaties that we have with the federal government specify what our rights are what our treaty rights are when it comes to water, how much we're allocated to use, what that amount is based on. And I think we see a lot of these treaties that specify concerns when it comes to water, that there is a distinction or a delineation specifically to agriculture and food production. So you may have a lot more flexibility when it comes to agricultural operations as far as what water resources are available to you versus water resources that might just be used for general economic development. So get a look at your tribe's treaty, see if there's any particular distinctions. Obviously, in addition to your tribal treaty rights, we also have inherent water rights associated with our rights to exist as tribal organizations and tribal people. So I think that one's a really exciting component to consider, and it gives you a good idea of what resources that you'd have or would maybe need to resource. And not just water, what water leases are available to you if that's not something that, you know, there's an inherent right or inherent access to, and what infrastructure is needed for you to access that water. Do you need to build new irrigation systems? Do you need to, you know, reach out to your IHS sanitation counterparts and see if there's some assistance in getting some new water lines laid out to locations that you'd be interested in production agriculture activities or processing activities at. Maybe you want to encourage your tribal citizens to become producers, but they need water in order to be able to do that. The Department of Ag at a tribe could be the intermediary to assist in getting that done. Who's supporting this? Does your community support it? Do your tribal citizens support the creation of a Department of Agriculture? Maybe you have some elected officials who ran on a food sovereignty platform, and you would be able to get their support in this type of development. Or maybe you are an elected official who is looking to really promote food sovereignty and agriculture within your community. This is a way that you can list your support. What personnel or labor are available to you? Again, do you have a good labor pool in your area? Is this something that you could coordinate with your education, employment, and training programs in order to leverage some of that labor if you need it? What type of personnel needs do you have? Do you need to hire somebody with some expertise or with some management experience, or who understands agribusiness operations in a way that's different from regular business operations? A lot of times when we're looking at production activities, especially if we're growing outside in the ground, we get maybe one crop a year. So you would need somebody who would be able to manage a once a year type of harvest and then revenue generating activity. I will say good agribusiness managers know that there's more than one way to not just have one particular time of the year when you're looking at harvest or revenue through cover crops and crop rotations and different types of opportunities that exist with that. So having somebody with inherent knowledge about what opportunities exist for your Department of Agriculture is very important. And then also what enterprises or organizations are available to you. Do you have an existing operation that, you know, would be a good fit for this? Do you have partner organizations that would maybe want to come in and help you fund some of the operations or activities to get them off the ground? Do you have any nonprofits that would be really interested in sharing their expertise or their services through your Department of Ag to touch on maybe some of the programs that you operate, or even assist some of your tribal citizens from a food and ag perspective? I know that there are nonprofits that are really interested in seed sharing, and people are very excited to receive heritage seeds, especially if they're of a particular variety that is nuanced to their tribe. I'm a Cherokee citizen, and we have a seed sharing program, and Pat Gwynn was able to reach out to a lot of our Cherokee elders to source some of these seed products, but also learn about them and learn how they're used, what type of food and medicinal purposes are available to them through those seeds, the heritage seeds, and then also distributing them. So that's an example of a program that might live within a Department of Agriculture, but may need some external support from external organizations or external people in order to really make it successful. There's also a section to see, what existing tribal guidance information materials are there. Do you have an ARMP, an Ag Resource Management Plan? That is very indicative of what your property's best uses are, what kind of inventory or resources are available to you. An ARMP is also an opportunity to lay out tribal policy when it comes to food and agriculture activities and land management activities. So that may be very informative as far as the direction that you need to go. In addition to an ag resource management plan, do you have an integrated resource management plan? Those are pretty common as well, and we'll give you some additional information with regard to what resources are available that you can leverage to make your Department of Ag work for you. In addition to those types of materials, that's a place to list your, community feedback, your employee feedback, and any type of possibly even elected official feedback to include for consideration as you're working towards developing this Department of Agriculture. And I think maybe even one of the most important things to consider, especially if you're an elected official, where's the money going to come from? What kind of funding opportunities are there and what sources exist? Depending upon, the type of program you're interested in, you may be able to leverage federal grant funding. You may be able to leverage some self-governance funding by self-contracting or self-compacting some of the BIA functions, especially when it comes to things like rangeland management or fencing activities, and just different kinds of BIA related activities. I will say that just because BIA is not currently providing those services to you doesn't mean that that's not an activity that they are distinctly responsible for. So you may be able to self-compact an activity for a service that you're not currently receiving. So keep that in mind when you're considering your funding sources. Do you have gaming revenues that you want to allocate for some startup opportunity, or do you have tribal revenue resources that you'd be able to put towards your Department of Agriculture? All great things to consider, and all of those. This worksheet is a place to list out all of those considerations. So it'll help you when you're considering program development, reorganization, or additions, how to maximize the utility, and then also how to determine what scale works best for you. I recommend starting small and scaling up from there, but sometimes maybe more equipped and able to make a larger investment up front and have a bigger startup, depending upon where they're at, what the will of the people is, what the buy-in is from your elected officials and from your policymakers. So this is a really good worksheet to kind of work through and make sure you have everything that you need in front of you to think about. And I would recommend accessing this and printing it off because you can fill in the blanks and also hole punch it and put it in a binder. So when you're getting all the information that you need, you can make copies of it and stick it between the pages or organize it behind whatever heading that you need so that you have it organized and available and in front of you. Next slide. So these are examples of sample organization charts, just kind of to show there's a lot of different ways that you can organize a Department of Agriculture. Some may be all under the same umbrella. Some may be under a bunch of different divisions or programs or departments. Some tribes create divisions or collections of agriculture programs standalone, and some may exist, under commerce or under interior. Other tribes focus on smaller sets of programs, especially those that are supported with federal funding. Those are pretty common. So you can see, there's this purple chart is a smaller tribe that has fewer programs, but they still have an agriculture program here down at the bottom, and talks about rangeland management and farmland management. But those programs also interact with the additional programs that are listed above. You may have a larger tribe with lots of programs, like you have, the orange and the blue tribes here, or organization charts here that really kind of reflect a lot of the different distinctions that are available. And I think what we see frequently, you'll see this. So under the blue chart at the very top, you see social services. And then under that is FDIPR, the food distribution program on Indian reservations, and then elder nutrition. So a lot of times you'll see nutrition programs pre-existing in tribes that are interested in starting departments of agriculture. So you may not reorganize those because they're already in existence under social services and you want to leave it there, but you can still create, a Department of Agriculture that would interact with these nutrition programs, especially if your tribe is interested in self-contracting 638 opportunities. That's a really great way to support your local tribal agriculture economy, and that's a way that they can work together. Again, I know the font's kind of tiny on these, but you'll be, if you can, when you access the link at the end and download this information if you like, it's a lot easier to read. It's very clear, and it's a full-size page, so you'll be able to see everything that you need. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Blake. Blake has worked on some really great infographics and put together a lot of good material, but I'm going to let him talk about some of these individual focused materials. Our previous set of materials were targeted towards tribal governments, employees, and elected officials when it comes to developing tribal departments of ag. Blake's going to talk about how departments of ag can benefit classes of individuals here.
Thank you, Carly. I think that was a great perspective in terms of how these different entities can interact at the tribal level. There's a lot of considerations that tribal governments need to take into account, and the mind map and the additional resources that were shared kind of give a good overview of that from a tribal leader standpoint and how that interacts with your existing governance structure, how you want to grow your governance structure. But the other side of the coin is that a tribal department of ag, being part of a governance structure is going to be responsible for dispensing services and being responsible to the constituents at the ground level. And with this being a agriculture focused entity, it's going to be serving two entities that are two individual classes I would like to focus on for the purposes of this conversation. The first of those is beginning farmers and ranchers. And this infographic provides a detail of the several ways that tribal beginning farmers and ranchers can benefit from a tribal department of agriculture. Under, this list is by no means exhaustive. These are just some high level examples that, tribal leaders might want to take into account. And what are the benefits for the citizens in the local market nearby, specifically the beginning farmers and ranchers. And these are lumped into disaster planning, regulation, market facilitation, credit access, education and youth programming, natural resources management, and federal program administration and pass-throughs. In the context of disaster planning, beginning farmers and ranchers can benefit from enhanced emergency management planning from a Department of Ag, connecting them with local operations to establish a network of local food growers. And also it provides a centralized point of contact for third-party assistance and third-party interest in donating foods and services in times of need. Carly gave, a good preview of regulation. Regulation with that, it's important to know that from a governance standpoint, if a tribe is not exercising its sovereignty to occupy a regulatory space, you can face encroachment from the outside. And that can sometimes, to the people on the ground level, send a mixed signal as to whose regulation is governing. Do we have to comply with this? What are the standards that our product is going to be held to as it moves across jurisdictions? There's a lot of things that are kind of up in the air if there's not really a regulatory infrastructure in place. And if you have a tribal department of agriculture charged with, administering those regulatory duties, it can give a transparent set of food production standards to facilitate on-reservation economic development, especially for those beginning farmers and ranchers that are just starting out. Carly pointed to the example of industrial hemp production. The other thing too is the Food Safety Modernization Act, so that tribes can enact their own food safety criteria for produce and for preventive controls for human foods and get a variance under that law so that federal standards are not controlling, and they can have the Tribal Department of Ag enforce those standards and also provide the training and outreach to those young farmers and ranchers and beginning farmers and ranchers that might need that training, that might have some more considerations specific to the context of the regulation, to the location nearby. Market facilitation and credit access. There are new ways that tribal departments of ag can be creative in helping find new markets for tribal young farmers and ranchers and beginning farmers and ranchers nearby, by giving new partnerships with local farmers market programs, allowing food to be produced to be directly marketed to the public. There's programs that you can also partner with. Throughout this conference, we've heard a little bit about farm to school. The Tribal Department of Ag can work with the local schools to establish partnerships so that those beginning farmers and ranchers can have a stable market market share that they occupy and a reliable customer base to get that food to children, as food is medicine, and growing our youth. The other thing that we see with market facilitation and credit access is that Indian country is located a lot in credit deserts, and because of this, that can be a significant obstacle for beginning farmers and ranchers trying to get the capital they need to start their operation or scale it up to another level. And a tribal department of agriculture can serve as a housing entity for a CDFI, a community development financial institution that's really administered by the tribe and geared towards specifically providing ag lending to those producers. Education and youth programming. This can serve as a hub for tribal youth programs, such as summer youth work positions and college internships that offer employment opportunities to beginning and young farmers and ranchers. This is also a place that you can have youth efforts that live for beginning farmers and ranchers. It can serve as the housing entity for programs such as a 4-H or FFA chapter. It can have events such as an all-Indian stock show, and it can also provide mentorship opportunities to learn from more experienced and seasoned producers in the area. So you have kind of that networking and that mentorship going on. It can provide natural resource management oversight, providing technical assistance to beginning farmers and ranchers looking to enroll in USDA land conservation programs through the Natural Resource Conservation Service, the USDA agency in charge with that. Set tribal priorities for land management decisions by creating ag resource management plans under the American Indian Resource Management Act, as well as serving for the authority for administering the 638 compacts that a tribe might have with the Bureau of Indian Affairs for forest and timber management. And lastly, federal program administration and pass-throughs. A tribe can take over a lot of programs through the 638 authority, and we're seeing an expansion of that with the self-governance demonstration project with 638 taking over the FDIPR program. And that's a new pathway that's been created through a demonstration project that will hopefully see more expansion of under the law. And with that, Tribal Department of Ag could serve in coordination with the Tribal Food Procurement Program, or as the housing entity for that, not only to serve the new nutritional needs that could be met by this, but also sourcing that food locally to get more native produced local, regional, and traditional foods incorporated into that food package, and kind of perform those partnerships for young and beginning farmers and ranchers nearby to get their products through that procurement process. Next slide, please. The one thing that I will say that both of these materials are very similar in that we talk about young farmers and ranchers and native producers, because a lot of the time, producers being the larger category, but young and beginning farmers and ranchers being kind of a subset of that. So between the two infographics on tribal departments of ag serving beginning young farmers and ranchers and native producers, you're going to see a lot of similarities. Another one of those similarities through all the topic areas that I had mentioned, one might be to point out is that there is a frequently asked questions section here where we kind of detail, what might a tribal department of ag, why would I need one? I'm from Oklahoma originally. The state of Oklahoma has a tribal or a state department of agriculture. Why would a tribal citizen want, why would a tribal leader want to invest in that? What benefit could that serve differently for a tribal citizen that their state department of ag can't already meet? And we kind of go through some of the framework of what those benefits could be. That could be, providing more cultural context in some of the training and outreach efforts. That could be the home for tribal extension agents that are more rooted in the local community and know some of the local traditional practices that need to be embedded within that. And also, the other thing we have to take into account is why do you need a tribal department of agriculture when you have these programs existing? And one thing we point out in these documents is these serve as kind of a hub, a one-stop shop for external communication. And in doing that, it allows Native producers to know where to go in the tribal government, especially, the bigger government gets, sometimes the harder it is to find, the central point of contact, and you might get lost in a phone tree or an email chain when you're just trying to get an answer on one issue. Well, if all these programs live under one hub of a Department of Agriculture, those beginning farmers and ranchers and those individual Native producers know right where to go and who to talk to get their questions and needs met efficiently and effectively within their tribal governance structure. So those are two things I wanted to point out with these. But you're going to see a lot of similarities in these topics that we had just covered in terms of disaster planning, regulation, market facilitation and credit access, education and youth programming, natural resource management, and federal program administration and pass-throughs. So with that, I will go on to the next slide and focus more on the value added piece of this. Now, the value added piece of this is a little bit different because you might not necessarily be involved as a farmer and rancher, but you might be a processor. You might be in a different stage of having an agricultural operation on that supply chain. And so how does a tribal Department of Agriculture support scaling up a value added operation? Well, first of all, we wanted to create an infographic because, value added can be kind of one of those buzzword terms that's thrown around that a lot of people might not know about. So, here, this infographic gives a baseline example of what a value-added product does. If you're trying to hit on one of those niche markets of certified organic, or if you're wanting to have a made and produced by the American Indians trademark, if you're wanting to have a product that's physically separated from other similar products while being grown on the same farm, such as traditional heirloom squash varieties. What role can tribal departments of agriculture play in that? You can get food safety training, inspection services, help with access to markets of capital, and so forth. Promote individual access programs and federal pathways of getting these markets and these studies funded, such as the USDA Value Added Producer Grant. And also kind of providing an overview of what different niche markets might be and what kind of regulation there might need to be over that, such as the cottage food laws that can kind of exempt some of the smaller producers from a lot of the larger regulatory burdens that sometimes get met with the size of the operations including. And here we also talk about the benefits of going value added and kind of really investing in this. Keeping 8 cents of every food dollar is typical for farmers across the United States, but food processors retain 14.9 cents of every food dollar, and these value added dollars being captured more on the reservation increase the size of that dollar that's turning over in the reservation economy and helping that economic development and spur jobs in the local community. So those are just some of the resources we have there. And you can also see links to our other resources, such as the Model Tribal Food and Agriculture Code. We talk about cottage food laws. So those are some examples of ways that you might want to think about this from an individual standpoint. Getting more into the business discussion, I'm going to turn it over to Josiah, who's going to give an overview of our infographic on business structures and how tribal departments of agriculture can play a role with that.
Thank you, Blake. So as we work with American Indians and Alaska Natives who are supporting their food systems, they take care and energy and honor the work that they are doing. And one of the ways that we can help protect what they're doing and support them is by limiting the liability that they might incur if something were to happen, especially as they're looking at building out their impact of their market reach. And so as we kind of look through different business structure opportunities, we wanted to provide some considerations for tribal departments of agriculture that might be helping these individuals as they're scaling up their business and navigating tribal business codes to identify what structures might work best for them. We list some categories of business structures here. If they are not specifically referenced in your tribal business code at this point, we do also include an overview and some considerations for how to build that out as part of your governance structure through the tribal model food code that Blake referenced. And so as we're kind of supporting them and navigating these spaces, we provide some additional consideration and thought for what tribal departments of agriculture might want to consider in helping to grow Indian agriculture economies so that the framework for how these businesses are scaling up scales with them. And so we recognize that agriculture is not a siloed space, right? None of this happens in a vacuum. And so as tribal departments of agriculture are engaging markets and are engaging people who are directly serving their communities and providing food access for their people, there are 3 different kind of models that might be a helpful reference point, kind of building out from looking at the business structure in the center to the incubation of that business. How do you help it grow? How do you help it navigate its considerations? How do you help it kind of recognize some of those structural constraints from the market and kind of pivot accordingly? Training to ensure that you're covering kind of all aspects of market requirements, federal government requirements through considerations like the Food Safety Modernization Act, and oversight, building into those larger discussions that Carly referenced from a regulatory standpoint. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Carly to start looking at next steps.
Great, thank you, Josiah. So as you can see, we've had a really robust opportunity to develop a lot of great resources for you to access. So what's coming next? Like we said, this is just a preview, but we really want to get your thoughts on these materials. Do you think they're informative, or will they be helpful to your tribe or operation? What information do you think needs to be included? And are there any other topics that you think that we should address? And you'll be able to do that through the Q&A session at the end of this session that we are coming up to very quickly. And then our contact information is also on the very last slide of this presentation. Next slide. So some of the topics that we are going to continue to develop resources on are the list that you see here: labeling, BIA, EIS requirements, which is environmental impacts studies, Section 106 constraints under the National Historic Preservation Act, fencing, supply chains, access to credit, land, realty services, nutrition programs, tons and tons of great information we're planning on rolling out to you. Next slide. So be on the lookout. February of 2021, we will have the next set of materials ready and available to go. And we're really excited to get those out to you, and would love to hear from you about what you're looking for, what needs and information that you need to get your ag stuff off the ground and really help out with food systems in your tribal community. With that, we'll go to the next slide and open it up for Q&A whenever we're ready. And we can go ahead and probably transition to the last slide so that we can get all of our contact info up. Awesome. And I forwarded, Mike, I forwarded the link to you for the Eats Academy preview. It's in the chat, and I can actually drop, copy and paste that in here again. We would love that if you could share that with our audience that's watching. And in the meantime, we'd love to hear some questions. Oh, Lottie's back. Thank you, Lottie. So Lottie, I dropped the link in for you to share with people that are watching.
And while we're waiting for questions, oh, sorry, go ahead, Lottie.
No, you're okay. I was just going to say, I'm going to go ahead and see if there are any questions that are submitted on the CVent platform. If you just give me 1 minute, I'm just refreshing my yeah, we don't have any questions right now, but what we can do is share the link with those that attended this session. All of the breakout session material will be found on our website, covering all of the different sessions and everything like that. So if you are again participating, you want to learn more about Eats Academy, we should have all of that information on the IAC annual the events website or web page. Wow, am I needing lunch? Well, yeah, so thank you all so much. Again, it's always exciting to hear what's happening over at IFAI. I've got a little one who's ready for a snack as well. For those that, again, if you are attending, just remember, or I encourage you to go and participate in the closing ceremony that's happening here in about 5 minutes. It kicks off at 2. And then also we have a storytelling event this evening at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. please join us there. It's going to be wonderful. Yeah, thank you, ladies and guys.
Yeah,
Lottie,
thank you.
Yeah, I'll interject real quick. All that information that we presented today is going to be available at our virtual booth as well. So everybody check that out. We'd love for you to access those materials and let us know what you think.
Yes, please check that out. And before we close out, I just want to give our team another thank you. To Carly, Blake, and Josiah, thank you so much. Whitney, Sonny, our communications manager, and Nikki Young, our administrative assistant, weren't able to be on with us today, but all of the materials that you see here wouldn't have been possible without their graphic design knowledge and know-how. So big thank you to them. Also, thank you to Brenton Jones, our budget specialist. Wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. As I want to give a special shout out to our Congressional Hunger Fellows, Olivia and Joel as well. They also worked on some of these materials, and we're really excited to have them with us. And one more big thank you to our friends and partners at IAC and to the Walmart Foundation for supporting this work. Thank you so much. Please check out our website. If you have any questions, reach out to anybody on our team. All of our contact info is here, and definitely stop by our virtual booth. With that, I think, Latasha, I will turn it back over to you.
Great, that is it. Thank you. Thank you all. We'll see you at 2 p.m.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Great job.
Thanks, Mike.
Goodbye now.